What's up, y'all? Toya here, and I am back with another video for y'all. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys either like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Alright, y'all, so I'm pretty sure that you guys have read this title, but yes, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. So I felt like it would be a good idea to tell my story and hopefully inspire people who might have also been struggling dealing with credit card debt. Between the fact that unfortunately not too many people have the financial knowledge in general, and the fact that there are just too many uncertainties with rising costs, and people feel like they don't have any choice but to charge everything to their credit cards. I don't want people thinking that having debt is a death sentence, nor is it something that you should be ashamed of because you got caught up in it. It's not something that you should be ridiculed for. All of those, you shouldn't make dumb decisions, or it's your fault that you're in debt. Those statements, they don't help anyone. Sure, for some, tough words might be beneficial to you, but for most folks, getting that proper guidance, whether you're looking stuff up yourself or getting a tough reality check, getting that guidance and that knowledge, that's what's going to help you make better financial choices. So I'm hoping that my story today will be able to provide that push that someone needs. So how did I end up with $20,000 in credit card debt? Well, I'll tell you that it didn't happen overnight, but once I realized how much I actually owed, it definitely felt like it snuck up out of nowhere. And yeah, but let's start from the beginning. Now, growing up, I didn't have too much insight on the finances in the household, and I think that most people can say the same. I would say during my childhood, we lived a pretty good life. You know, we were able to go on vacations regularly. We went on Disney cruises, you know, all of that stuff, right? It wasn't until my mom got laid off, I remember her telling me, Toya, things are gonna get tight around here. Things are gonna start getting tight. And even with that, I felt like it didn't really get broken down and explained thoroughly enough, at least not how I needed it translated in order to help me in the future. And I would say that that's where it begins with most of us. No one gave us the ins and the outs of budgeting, credit, all of those things that we needed today. So when you get into adulthood, you know, it gets a bit overwhelming because everything is just being thrown at you left and right. So for me, my first credit card was $3,000. So I got that directly through my bank. There wasn't anything special about it. There were no rewards, nothing like that. It was just a super basic credit card. Now, did I max that out? Absolutely. But I did end up paying it off. Eventually, they increased my limit to $5,000. Did I max that out? Absolutely. But again, I paid that off eventually. Then I started to do some digging. Okay, they say credit is good, right? So that should mean I should get more credit cards, right? Well, yes and no. One thing I do remember being told, I don't even know who told me this, but I was told, do not just go crazy getting a bunch of credit cards, having 10, 20 credit cards, all that stuff. You know, if you want to have a couple of credit cards that you want to use for, you know, building up credit, you know, you have to use it, you know, that's fine, but don't go crazy, right? And that's what I thought. I said, okay, well, I need credit. I need to increase my limit to, you know, build my credit, because, you know, that's how the math was mathing for me. So I ended up finding another credit card that actually offered some pretty good rewards. You know, you get the points for the cash back, you know, travel, all that, you know, the 9 yards and everything, right? So I got that card and I got approved for, I think it was 15,000, something like that, right? And this was a card that did not charge you interest for the first 12 months. So in my mind, I'm thinking 12 months, a year, I'll be good. I can go ahead and run this card up, and then hopefully I have it paid off before the 12 months is up so I don't get charged interest. Man, when I tell you those 12 months flew by and I realized, ooh, I done about spent my whole credit line and I got to pay that back plus interest. Like when I tell you, because this was a time, I think this is around the time when my husband and I, we were getting our apartment. And I was like, oh, you know, we get the furniture, get this, get that, get just charging everything to the car. Because at the time, you're thinking like $15,000, you know, that's a lot. But, you know, knowing now, you know, it's not like you have $15,000 to spend. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. I think that's what a lot of people think. I got a credit line of X amount of dollars. I got X amount of dollars to spend. Obviously, that's the wrong way of thinking. That's the backwards way of thinking. But hey, not knowing any better, that's where my head was at, okay? The other thing is, you know, I'm spending all this money and I'm banking on the fact that I'm gonna be getting a raise at work. That raise never came. So I'm making purchases ahead of time without even securing the income. So I'm like, okay, crap. I can't really afford to pay all this back, at least not anytime soon, not in time for, you know, that interest to hit. So that's problem number, what, 2, 3, whatever. So I was waiting on a raise that didn't come for work. And at the same time, I was trying to get into real estate. And so I wanted to, you know, do some wholesaling and things like that in real estate. I got some certifications, I got my software. I had to hire people to make phone calls for me because at the time I was still going into the office. So I needed people to do it while I was at work. And all of that money, I'm just spending and spending and spending and spending. So I didn't get the raise. I didn't get a lead to actually pay back all of that stuff I was spending. And I had to figure out how do I take care of this balance, because I'm looking at my card and I'm like, this thing is damn near maxed out, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to come up with another plan, right? I got to figure out how to get this paid off. So I come across another credit card, and this one offered 18 months of interest-free payments. So I said, okay, I could transfer this balance and I won't have to worry about paying interest. You know, I should be able to go ahead and pay this off by, you know, 18 months. I should be good, right? And I didn't do a direct transfer, if you want to say literally just transferring the balance. I more or less just started using that card as my primary card that I was using for everything, and then I was just constantly paying off the other one, so I wasn't even using it anymore. And I paid that off pretty quickly, I would say. So paid that off, and pretty much that whole balance went over to the new card because I was just charging. I wasn't paying that card, okay? So another mistake number 4. I was just making all kinds of mistakes, okay? Y'all probably listening to this story like, what is wrong with this girl? She should have known better. But again, you know, you don't have people to go ahead and tell you what's right and wrong as far as how you make certain transactions or you get certain cards and do this and that. So this is just me learning, okay? So eventually the 18 months came and went, and there was a lot that came and went during that time. So while I was attempting to pay that card down, you know, a lot of other things were happening. So my husband and I, we got our house, you know, everything was cool with that. And, you know, stuff with your car comes up, you got to pay that off. And then within the first year of being in this house, our furnace went out in the middle of the winter. So that's more money that we had to spend, more money that we technically didn't have at the time. So of course that goes on to the credit card. So every single time you think that you're getting ahead, you're taking more steps back because stuff happens, life happens, right? So at this point I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do I pay this down? I'm just putting a little money here and there, but with the interest charges, it's almost like I'm back at square one. At that time, we had another big oops, or whatever you want to call it. So our property taxes got screwed up. So our mortgage was essentially doubling. Obviously we can't afford a mortgage that's double what we currently pay. So yeah, after doing some digging and figuring out, you know, that whole debacle was, yeah, it was a mess. Long story short, they didn't apply the exemptions for the taxes. Secondly, the company that owns our loan, they gave us money back as a surplus when they weren't supposed to. Of course, that money went into the house for repairs, so we had to end up paying that back. And it came as a shortage in our escrow. They ended up spreading it out over a longer period than the initial 12 months that you would typically get when you have a shortage on your escrow. And we were like, okay, we have to pay this down and pay this down quick so we can, you know, not get ourselves screwed over by the next escrow analysis in the event that we end up short again. So that's when we get into gig work, okay? Enter gig work. So at this point, while we're trying to figure out everything with the property taxes, I would say I was about $20,000 in debt as far as my credit card debt, right? Out of about 30 to 35,000 available credit, 20 of that was being used. So yeah, didn't want to be held back by debt. I wanted to eventually get a bigger house. Can't do that when your credit is shot. It's a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I said, okay, we have to make a change. We have this issue with these property taxes. We're getting into this gig work to pay that down, but once we get that out of the way, I'm tackling this credit card debt, okay? So we did the gig work. We did roadie, Amazon, food delivery. I think that's when I first started doing delivered. You know, I did a handful of different apps. Then I started the YouTube channel. So I started the YouTube channel in March of 2023. I ended up getting monetized. I think it was July. Yeah, I think it was in July. So what is that? About 4 or 5 months later, got monetized. So with the money that I was getting from YouTube and the money I was getting from gig work, all of that went straight to my credit cards. So every single month when that YouTube check hit, when it hit my account, straight to the credit card. When I got my money from the gig work, whether it was getting paid same day or the next day or whenever, straight to the credit card. So I was chipping away at that number fast. On top of that, you know, getting more income, I did end up getting a little bit of a raise at work, so that helped as well. And I also had to learn to discipline myself. So instead of, you know, going and eating out as much, you know, trying to cook at home more and save some money, or, you know, not buying all of my wants. You know, there were things that I wanted to do. I wanted to upgrade my PC at home and buy some more parts, or I wanted to go ahead and buy, you know, this furniture for the living room, or, you know, this whatever, just random stuff for the house. I just had to figure out how to decrease my spending and increase my income, and that's exactly what I did. I did that from 2023 up until now, and as of today, well, a few days ago I should say, I am credit card debt free. Now, I still use my credit cards pretty much on a regular. I have one primary card that I use all the time. So moving forward, I'm just paying it off completely unless I'm making like a big purchase or something, like we need something for the house or whatever it may be. You know, I might pay it down over a couple months or whatever, but my everyday spending, I'm using the card for purposes of getting the points, stuff like that, and I'm paying it right back off. Ironically, I felt like this was perfect timing because this was around the same time when my husband and I wanted to, you know, do our courier business. So in case you didn't know, you know, I started a courier business at the end of 2024, but that ended up getting put on hold because I had to have my surgery. So I'm still recovering from surgery today. But during that time frame, that allowed me to not only pay off my car, and that allowed me to focus more on paying off the rest of my credit card debt. That way we can have a clean slate. That way when we do go and purchase our vehicle for the business, you know, hopefully we can get ourselves a better deal because, you know, credit has gone up, right? A couple things that I just want to note that I did for, you know, anyone that's wondering, how did you do it? How did you do it? Like I said, discipline. Discipline is going to be the main thing that you need to do when it comes to paying off any type of debts, right? Sometimes we get into certain habits that are hard to break. You know, we're human. It happens, all right? Don't beat yourself up about it. You know, even for myself, I'm still trying to, you know, get myself together as far as diet and exercise and things like that. So, you know, sometimes I fall short, but I know that, you know, I just got to start again. So, you know, just because you fail one time doesn't mean you can't start again. If you have a habit of, you know, ordering out all the time, or, you know, just shopping and, you know, going out and spending whatever, you know, a lot of that stuff, it does add up. You know, a $10 purchase here, a $20 purchase here, $30 purchase here. And then before you know it, you look at the end of the week, dang, I done spent like $200. And you looking like, dang, I bought this. Oh, that added up. So you'll be surprised, some of that stuff that you be buying, you know, the small things here and there, they add up very quickly. So just trying to discipline yourself. Of course, that's the main thing. You do not want to have any unnecessary spending. Now, I understand that a lot of people might be in a position where their income is not where they want it to be. That did happen with me because, like I said, I was waiting for a raise that never came. So I was spending more than I had initially. I was expecting to have more, but I didn't. So I jumped the gun and I was spending more than what I really had. I know the case with some people, you know, you may not know where that extra income is going to come from. Gig work. Like, that's exactly what I did. I ended up getting into the gig work. And this is funny because I'm always thinking of that argument that people say, well, gig work isn't a real job, this and that. Gig work helped me pay off my credit card debt. It's not my primary source of income, but because I was not getting the money that I needed from my job at that time, it came eventually. Well, technically, I'm still waiting on more, but I ain't gonna talk about that. Until I was able to get the money that I needed from whatever other source of income, gig work supplemented that income that I needed in order to pay down my credit cards. So if you hear anybody ever saying that gig work ain't a real job, bro, I technically paid off my property taxes with my gig work. I paid off my car with gig work. I paid off all my credit card debt. I get a lot of stuff with it. And when I say gig work, I don't want people to think it's just because of the deliveries, because remember, I started a YouTube channel because of the gig work. I wanted to share my knowledge and share my experience with people. So I just kind of took gig work and took it up here, took it to the next level. So you don't necessarily have to start a YouTube channel. I mean, if you want to, it's technically passive income. Yes, you have to go and, do the recording and editing and all of that. But if you have an opportunity to scale up and do something else with something, don't just settle for just doing the deliveries. If you want to start a YouTube channel, start a YouTube channel. It ain't got to be nothing extravagant. Trust me. Once you get monetized, a couple extra dollars here and there, it will, trust me, it's going to help you. Because at this point, now that it's not going to be going to just my credit card debt, I literally am going to have about maybe a bill or two paid off every single month because of YouTube. That's one less thing that I have to worry about. So trying to diversify, ways of getting your income, that's going to be super beneficial. Another thing which I did not mention, I forgot to mention, I got myself a high yield savings account. And this is actually why I was able to make a couple of big purchases, not purchases, but big payoffs, I would say. So with my car, I had my car since 2019. This car currently had it since the end of 2019. And I had, I think, about a year and a half left on it. So I had my high yield savings account. I got it sometime in I think it was like 2023, early 2024, something like that. So I had it for, I know, at least a year and a half. Just throwing money in there, throwing money in there, throwing money in there. High yield savings account, you're constantly collecting interest on there. High interest at that. I think when I first got the account, it was 5%. Now it's 4% because of the freaking Fed cut, but yeah. So what I ended up doing, that bit of money that I had collected in my high yield savings account, I actually took that and I paid off my car. And then I did another transaction and I took that and paid off a good chunk of my credit card debt. And I was able to pay, I think I had like maybe $2,000 left this last month. And I just went ahead and paid that out flat because I actually got an extra check. I got paid 3 times last month in May. So I took that last check and pretty much put that towards the credit card, or at least the remaining balance that I had. So yeah, it worked out pretty good with the timing. I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that. I'm not telling you that this is the foolproof way to pay off your credit card debt. Everybody has different circumstances. So everything that I mentioned may not work for you. It's not a one size fit all type of deal. But I will say the main thing is that you need to have discipline and cut back on spending if you can, and figuring out how to get more income, if that's increasing your one source of income that you have, or if you have another avenue of getting income. And it doesn't have to be gig work. I'm just sharing my story on how I was able to utilize gig work and use that to pay off my debts. I still got student loans, I still got a mortgage, but that's the only debt that I have. So I would rather have those debts. Well, honestly, I don't want to have student loan debt, but that's besides the point. I would rather have those than having credit card debt or some type of loan that I have a debt with, or whatever it may be. I'm perfectly content with where I'm at right now, and it's only going to get better from here. It's only going to get better from here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I just wanted to share my story, and hopefully it does inspire somebody. I know, like I mentioned earlier, some people are getting discouraged because rising costs, and they feel like they have no other place to turn as far as, like, you know, with their expenses going up. They have to put it on a credit card. But please take some time to just lay out all of your expenses and figure out what you're spending your money on, and you'll be surprised that there might be a few things that you can cut back on. Like I said, whether it's food, it could be just miscellaneous things you're purchasing, it could be some subscriptions that you have. Maybe you got DoorDash plus, what is it, a Dash Pass or whatever, you know, maybe your Netflix or your Hulu or whatever. Maybe you can go ahead and cut back on those. You know, just trying to make better financial decisions. You know, a lot of this stuff we weren't taught, we just kind of learned on the fly. But like I said earlier, it's never too late to learn. So it's never too late to learn, it's never too late to start. You got to start somewhere. So that's pretty much it. I think I've yapped long enough. I think this video might be a little long, but oh well. I just wanted to go ahead and get as much detail out as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much it, y'all. So I do hope that this was helpful for someone. Like I said, you ain't got to be ashamed of having credit card debt, because like even with myself, you know, I'm listening to myself as I'm telling this story and I'm like, I cannot believe I did that. What was wrong with me? But we're here now. We're here now. We learn from our past, we keep moving, and you know, we just keep trying to get better. So but yeah, that's pretty much it, y'all. So before I let you guys go, I have to remind you guys to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss a video. But I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna catch you guys on the next one, and as always, stay safe out there and keep grinding.